I don't know if anyone out there is like in a PhD program, but I guess a few kind of notes I would have for Black women in PhD programs. One, find you a good advisor. Like literally the second you step on campus, just look for who do you think could end up being your advisor. Even if you can't find anyone who exactly matches your interest, find someone who could point you in the direction of someone who could match your interest, right? Because that's going to be what carries you through. I am currently in a pretty heavy quant program, like a quantitative research heavy program, and all my work is qualitative. And there's not too many people in my department who do qualitative work, and especially not too many people who do my qualitative work on like Black women, Black feminism, Black stuff that Black people care about, right? But I know that like my research is valid. I know that my research is real, and I know that my research is worth publishing and worth putting time and effort for. And you just have to remember that when you were kind of sitting in freaking contemporary or classical theory or, you know, stats, and they're talking about all these other things that literally are of no use to you because like you don't use those theoretical you don't use those theoretical backgrounds, you don't use that methodology because you're qual. Like, just remember that your research is valid. I don't care how many people tell you that like you're being stereotypical or that you're being biased or that, you know, you are just taking the easy route. I, as a Black woman, researching Black women, right? Like doing valid research, so doing the literature, looking up the theories, doing the interviews, doing the content analysis, the data collection. I am not any more biased or any more taking the easy, like people like to make it seem like because I'm a Black woman or because Black women study other Black women or study Black people or study race or study gender or study sexuality that we're just like taking the easy route, like as if when we make that declaration, like our theses and dissertations and all these types of things just manifest themselves for us and just kind of like, you know, just like, oh, okay girl, so now that means you will only need a month to finish your dissertation because what you're doing is just so easy and you know, you already know this, so that means you're probably not going to do the real work, right? Your work is not any less valid, and your struggle and your effort is not any easier. Honestly, more times than not, it's a lot harder, right? Because you're like constantly fighting for verification. You're constantly fighting to look for like a advisor. You're constantly trying to prove that your work is valid because there's always some annoying twit who's like, well, I don't see what the point. Why do we need to know more about Black women? No. It's like the same reason we're still learning about white men. Like, why am I still studying the work of a man from Europe from like 100 to 200 years ago, right? Like, he didn't take me into consideration when he wrote it. He probably didn't even think Black people were real, or if he did, he thought they were slaves. Like, why? What about that situation, right, involves me? So like I said, you're gonna be fighting constantly to validate your work. Actually, it's not even a fight. Like, it's a choice. If you want to explain to people why your work is valid, cool. I have personally gotten to the point where I'm like, look, if you're concerned about the validity of my work, read it. If you don't, you're not that concerned. And leave it at that, because it's such an energy drain to sit there and just be like, well, I use this theoretical background and I went about this methodology and I did this because of this and I used this and I did double the content analysis. Basically, you're working twice as hard to get the same recognition for people who are working, if half as much as you, they're probably working like a fourth as much as you, because they just walk in and they're like, I'm doing quantitative work, or I'm doing, work on, white men in businesses. And everyone's like, oh, yes, brilliant, novel, perfect, most important thing that's ever been written, right? As if that topic has not been covered 500 million times, So you have to make the choice of whether you want to engage with people and naysayers who don't believe that your work is something that is of value, right? As long as you have your conversation with your committee, your advisors, right? Make sure your methodology is solid, make sure your theoretical background is strong, and go on, carry on. You let your work speak for itself, right? You work on getting your stuff published, work with the people who trust you, who you trust, and you leave it at that. That's just me, you know? I guess another tip is just like, take care of yourself. Take care of this past year, right? This has been my first year in a PhD program, right? But it's not my first year in grad school because I went and got my master's up in DC, right? So this is technically like my third year in grad school. So I'm used to the workload of grad school. That wasn't an issue. It was just an adjustment, right? Moving back to Louisiana, and then now I'm in a PhD program, right? Like, I'm not in a master's. It's not a terminal master's program. I actually have to try and do something with the work that I do here. I have to try and get this published, right? Like this. And so a couple of the best things I did was kind of acknowledging that, like, I was getting stressed out and that I needed some type of help doing something. I needed some type of outlet. So it was like, threw myself into yoga, which was like forever. Best thing ever. Okay, like just 75 minutes where you can just sit and focus on you and your body and your mind and your spirit. Honey child, it'll work wonders for you. Even if you're not that good at it. Like, when I first started yoga, was up here, couldn't hold a down dog to save my life. Chaturanga, absolutely not. Like, arm strength wasn't there. Didn't understand how they got their bodies to do that, but you learned it, right? But the point isn't the tricks and, you know, the stunts, right? The point is the meditation and the focusing on yourself and your oneness and the spirit and the chakras and all of that good stuff, right? So that was like a great outlet just for like all the stress that was like building up. Another thing was therapy. Your girl started individual therapy, changed my god doggone life, okay? Like, literally going into a room and having an hour to just like talk about yourself and what's going on with your day, or what from your childhood is still impacting you, or what's affecting your relationships and this type of thing. Like, it's so relieving. And that's it, girl. And this is another thing. Find your clique. I being the like extrovert and just like, I always want to have friends, oh my god, right? Like, I need a support team outside of faculty. Like, I know I do. And right, like, your family, your friends, they're cool, they're great to vent to, but they don't get it. They don't understand. They do not know what the hell you're talking about when you're like, yeah, I just can't get this regression model to work, or I'm putting the command in SPSS, but for some reason when I run it, it's giving me this in the output as opposed to, you know, some the expected, and I can't find the proper B1, and then there's beta 1 and the beta 1 doesn't line up. No, like, they don't care, girl. They don't understand. They're just like, oh, okay, cool. You're doing stuff with numbers, right? So you need people in your cohort, in your program, but specifically, hopefully, in your cohort, who understand, who get it. Because Bae and besties and mom and them, they cool, but like, they ain't helping me run this SPSS command, right? Like, they ain't helping me write this final. They ain't helping me run this regression analysis. So have at least one other person in your cohort that you can kind of like trust and confide in and team up with, and, you know, just have that like support. I have 2 people, and we're basically just this like, that's the squad. Like, been the squad, like, to say we've only known each other less than a year, like, we done been through it together. Like, we all went through our first year, our PhD program together, same classes for the most part, you know, helped each other with homework. We all kind of have similar interests, which means they also don't necessarily have the most resources in our department. So we're basically all just kind of linking up, and we also link up with older people who are ahead of us in the program, who have kind of been through this phase again, who can give us advice and kind of be like, look, don't go to that professor, this is the professor you need to start with, or look, this is what I did to get through this and this. And honestly, best thing ever. Just having that support system and that safety net makes things so much better. You don't feel as alone, you don't feel as weird when it's 12 o'clock and you know you've opened your stats textbook and looked at the problems that you should have started a week ago, and now you're crying. You know, like, you don't feel as bad about that when you have somebody to call and be like, look, I don't know what to run to start to do, and someone being like, cool, I also have not done it right, how about we meet up and we get it together. So those are just some kind of tips, some kind of suggestions I have for, you know, if you're underrepresented in a higher learning program, or if you're thinking about a higher learning program, because it's just, man, it's not even the workload that gets you, it's just so mentally and emotionally exhausting, this whole process. You're just sitting and they're like, publish or perish, no, put out 5 million articles if you ever want to get a job, and job market is terrible, and tenure track is impossible. Like, you just have to block it out. You have to block it all out, especially me being, right, like a black female. So many people just from the jump, just from the gate, have 5 million reasons why I need to prepare for the worst, right? And my thing is like, look, me and Jesus, we done had a couple of conversations. You know, God Almighty has brought me this far. You know, she ain't gonna leave me now. You know, but they don't understand that, which is fine. You know, y'all don't have the same conversations with my Jesus that I do. But yeah, like, just, I remember school hadn't even started, and I was like, look, I gotta get out at 4 years. That's when my funding stops. I have to be gone by 2018. And she was like, well, you know, this white chick, she said, you know, well, it's really hard to be out in 4 years. The only person who got out, he just worked really hard. He just also happened to be black. He just worked, you know, really hard, and you know, he was crazy though, like getting out in 4 years possible. And it's just like, you cannot internalize things like that, because if you do, you're gonna be sitting over here being mediocre and average like everybody else. Just because it took you 7.5 years to get out, or you're on year 5 and you don't know when you're leaving, doesn't mean I don't, right? Like, I have a time limit that I set for myself. That means I have to go. I have yet to let myself down on any of my time limits, and now is not the time to start. You have got to, people, and I mean, sometimes people say it with concern, you know, actually trying to like help you, but other times people say it to like bring you down, because they see that you're confident, and they see that you have a purpose, and they see that you're not playing with them, and they need to like knock you down a few pegs. And of course, we all know, right, black women, like, oh gosh, when they come up in here confident and acting like they believe in themselves and that they are the hope and the dream of the slave, like, they getting out of pocket, they getting proud, they getting, you know, cocky. And it's like, people are gonna perceive you that way no matter what, but it's not your job to fix their perceptions. It's your job to do what you came to do and get the hell up out of here, right? Because like, this school is not trying to see me after 4 years, right? Like, as soon as 4 years hit, they're gonna be like, girl, bye. We have to give your funding to somebody else. So just always remember what you came in for, and like, keep your head up. Keep your head up. Do what you need to do to get through, girl, in a healthy way. Healthy, right? Like, me, now it's time to become an alcoholic. Now it's time to be, you know, diving head first, you know, into ounces of weed. You know, and not saying you can't do those things, I'm just saying now would not be a good time to pick up an addiction, right? Because even though it might get you and it might help you cope through, it's like, what are you gonna do once you graduate, right? Like, then you're all worn out and you're useless to everybody. So stay healthy. That's all I got for you. Peace.